And President Trump's steadfast in pushing for a quick end to the Ukraine war. He's also following through on his promise to ramp up tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China starting tomorrow. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. So what did the president say at today's event announcing these chip investments from Taiwan?
Good evening to you as well, Steve. So today, President Trump doubled down on his criticism of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy while reiterating that he wants the war in Ukraine to end quickly. He also pushed back against Zelenskyy's latest comments that he thinks the war in Ukraine will not end anytime soon. Here's what Trump said about that. Watch.
What do you need to see from President Zelenskyy to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. But he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that.
And this morning in a Truth Social post, President Trump said that he believes Zelenskyy doesn't want there to be peace as long as he has America's backing. And he added during the event that both Russia and the people of Ukraine want a peace deal to come soon. But he says if Zelenskyy doesn't want that, then he believes he won't be around for long. This all comes after the two had a heated meeting last Friday here at the White House, which resulted in Zelenskyy leaving early without signing a deal originally almost agreed to between the U.S. and Ukraine when it comes to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. But Trump today said that he believes the minerals deal is still on, adding that he will talk more about it tomorrow night. Steve.
And Iris, President Trump's long promised tariffs on several countries set to take effect tomorrow, including on China. Did the president signal any room for negotiations?
So today, President Trump made clear that there's no room left for these countries to negotiate to avoid these upcoming tariffs. He will impose a 25% tariffs on both Mexico and Canada to go into effect tomorrow. And today, he just signed an official order to impose 20% of tariffs on China. That's up from 10% that he's already imposed. And meanwhile, he says that these tariffs are to hold these countries accountable for their role in allowing fentanyl to go into the U.S. as well as to punish China for its unfair trade practices. Watch.
It's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs.
And the Trump administration is also pushing for both Mexico and Canada to match the U.S.'s tariffs on China. Steve.
The president will be giving a major speech to a joint session of Congress tomorrow, Iris. What do we know about it so far?
So the White House confirmed to us today that the theme for his address to the joint session of Congress, which will be his first in the second term, the theme of that will be the renewal of the American dream. It's going to have 4 parts. The first part being talking about his achievements both at home and abroad after taking office in January. And also he's going to talk about what he's done for the economy. And he's also going to push Congress to pass additional funding for the border. And also it comes to, of course, the major theme these days. He will lay out his plans for peace around the globe. President Trump himself said this morning that the speech tomorrow will be big, adding that he will tell it like it is. And the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told us today at the White House that it will be a must-see TV moment. Back to you.
NTD's Iris Tao live from the White House. Thank you, Iris. And with Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company set to invest $100 billion into the United States, President Trump says this will create thousands of jobs in domestic chip production in the U.S., all while reducing the U.S.'s reliance on Asia-made chips. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
The most powerful AI chips in the world will be made right here in America.
President Trump saying Taiwan's semiconductor company TSMC's $100 billion investment in the U.S. is a boost to national security.
This is a tremendous move by the most powerful company in the world. It's a matter of economic security. It's also a matter of national security for us.
TSMC is the world's largest producer of semiconductor chips. Semiconductors are used to make everything from smartphones to AI to missiles and tanks. And they're now one of the largest drivers of economies and military power. Now, this $100 billion investment is making more chip factories in Arizona. And TSMC has already invested $65 billion to this effort previously. Now, one reason to incentivize building in the U.S. is to avoid tariffs. But another is that the U.S. is trying to find alternatives to China's rare earth minerals. These rare earths are needed to make chips, and China has most of these minerals, about 90%. And the Chinese Communist Party has long been a threat to Taiwan's sovereignty. China's military has been more aggressive in the waters around Taiwan, whether it's conducting military exercises near Taiwan, ramming Philippine Coast Guard vessels, or most recently, China allegedly cutting an underseas cable belonging to Taiwan. And when asked on Tuesday about a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, Trump said,
"This would certainly, I can't say minimize, that would be a catastrophic event, obviously, but it will at least give us a position where we have, in this very, very important business, we would have a very big part of it in the United States. So it would have a big impact if something should happen with Taiwan."
Restrictions on China's semiconductor manufacturing goes back to the Biden administration. Now, last year, the U.S. restricted the sale of semiconductor making equipment to China. That's as Chinese buyers may now be circumventing these export controls. Recent reports found NVIDIA chips could be making their way to China. Additionally, the U.S. State Department earlier this month removed a line from its website that said that the U.S. does not support Taiwan's independence, showing a change in tone about the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And here to discuss the latest with us on China is Michael Lucci, founder of State Armor. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be on with you all.
It's great to have you, Michael. Talk to us about how these new tariffs, 20% on China going into effect, will ultimately benefit the United States and what pressure it might put on China.
The United States needs to remove its supply chains from the control of the Chinese Communist Party. The 20% tariff is one part of that. The deal that's going on with the chip makers is another part of that. But this is all under the umbrella of Donald Trump's America First investment policy, where we want to converge our supply chains with allies and bring them to America and separate our supply chains from the Chinese Communist Party.
You know, one narrative sometimes that we hear from opposing views is that this is ultimately tariffs or a tax on the American people. How does this support our national security interest and actually create a stronger supply chain?
Part of China's actually military strategy is to get us hooked on their technologies. It's a program called military civil fusion. They want to control certain technologies that have military and civilian use. Then they want to wipe out the production of those technologies in the United States. Chips is one example of that. Drones is another example of that. 5G equipment is another example of that. For the United States to be able to defend itself, we need to be able to build the things that might be needed in a future war. China is moving now, has been moving for 10, 20 years to make sure we cannot build those things. We need to reverse course, be able to build those technologies that are critical to national security here. And part of that is blocking the flood of Communist Party technologies that they put into our country to wipe out our producers.
Now, China is in an economically precarious position right now. Many things going on in that economy that are both seen and unseen. Could this tariff pressure on China potentially be the straw that breaks the camel's back?
It could potentially be that. It's hard to really know what's going on inside China's economy because they don't allow data to come out. They don't allow real data to come out. But between the tariffs and states and the federal government divesting from China, private companies divesting from China, pulling capital out of China, the United States does control the lion's share of the world's capital markets, and we are able to block sales from Chinese products into the United States. So that combination of moves by the United States can continue to erode China's economic strength, But I wouldn't predict too much that this will do it or some other thing will do it. We just know that for the good of the United States, we need to be separating our capital markets from them. We need to be separating our supply chains from the Communist Party.
Certainly no transparency when it comes to China, as we've seen time and time again, COVID being one of them as it was spreading throughout the country. President Trump also announcing today that the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company will be investing an additional $100 billion into U.S. chips production. What does this mean for our domestic industry?
This is a huge deal for our domestic industry. This puts America in the driver's seat for the cutting edge chips that will define the technologies of the future, from artificial intelligence to smart missiles to all the things that are so important for America to lead in. So it's a massive, huge deal for the United States. It's a huge deal for our supply chain resilience because we're strong partners with Taiwan, but at the same time, China is threatening to invade Taiwan. So hedging away from that total dependence on Taiwan while deepening our economic partnership with Taiwan is a really great move by President Trump. It's a massive investment coming into the United States. It started under President Trump and Governor Doug Ducey in Arizona years ago. And so this is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on something that's already working really well.
To your point, where does the long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity stand? And is this deal a clear signal that that might be over? And this is clearly a move that wants to align the United States strategically with Taiwan.
You can see that President Trump wants to align with countries such as Ukraine and such as Taiwan by deepening economic partnerships. Now, I think the best that we could say right now is that strategic ambiguity remains ambiguous. If China invades Taiwan, what's the United States going to do? We're not totally stating exactly what we're going to do. We know that President Trump wants to be strong in all regions of the world. At the same time, we know we need to have really good supply chain resilience here so that the Chinese Communist Party cannot leverage us economically in any way. So it's still ambiguous where we're going to be if China invades Taiwan. But I would say that President Trump's rapidly moving to make sure that there's peace and resilience across world theaters.
Certainly a mutual interest now with this big investment going here, making it even closer ally to the United States and United States national security. We'll be keeping a close eye on it. Michael Lucci, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And the CCP's human rights violations once again gaining traction on Capitol Hill today. Two lawmakers from both chambers of Congress are reintroducing the Falun Gong Protection Act, a bill that would mandate sanctions on those who are complicit in the regime's state-sponsored forced organ harvesting. The legislation was brought up by Congressman Scott Perry and Senator Ted Cruz. It's the first federal bill that directly targets the CCP's decades-long persecution against the Falun Gong community, a Chinese spiritual practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Since its public introduction in 1992, Falun Gong has been embraced across the globe, but practitioners in mainland China are imprisoned, tortured, and even killed for holding fast to their faith. The Falun Gong Protection Act unanimously passed the House of Representatives last year, but the Senate wasn't able to put it to a vote. Speaking to the Epoch Times, Senator Ted Cruz said, quote, "It's long past time to dismantle the CCP's state-sponsored organ harvesting industry." Congressman Scott Perry echoed that statement, saying, quote, "The CCP and its enablers must be held accountable for these atrocities." Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.